Now I would like to introduce a guest of mine. This guest is a New York City police detective. His name is Detective Bingo O'Shaughnessy, I'm sorry. Welcome to the show, Detective Bingo. What should I call you? Detective Bingo, Shaney boy?
Detective would be fine.
Detective would be fine. Okay, Detective. Well, I have a few questions to ask you. Of course, I work very closely with the police department, not really on an ordinary basis. Let's first talk about stop and frisk, okay? Detective, what do you do when you stop and frisk? What rights does an average legitimate businessman on the street have?
Well, Mr. Pantucci, stop and frisk isn't exactly a search. It's more designed to protect the people around you and protect the police officers and fellow officers there from someone possibly having a weapon that may be used to hurt somebody. So it's not really taken away from your rights if someone stops and frisks you.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. You know, let me give you another scenario. Let's say a guy's standing on the corner of Carmine Street. He's absolutely minding his own business. He's not waiting for he's not waiting for anybody. He's just sitting there, minding his own business, doing nothing.
So?
Well, the question that I have to ask you is, does the police department have a right to actually stop and frisk this man?
Well, if he's doing nothing, I don't think any police officer is going to stop and frisk him.
That makes a great deal of sense. Although I've run into similar experiences, but I'd rather not go into that right now. Why don't we talk about use of force? For instance, if you arrest a guy, right, and the guy puts up a fight, you have every right to punch him in the head or shoot his head off. How do you distinguish between the two things? What does the average New York City Police Department, what's the policy on this kind of stuff?
You'll never see excessive use of force here in New York City, Mr. Pantucci. New York City Police Department uses the minimum force necessary to compel compliance. That could be as little as a command voice, the use of open hand techniques, or if you have to move up to other measures, maybe a nightstick. The most you'll ever see is the drawing of a handheld weapon, 38, 9mm. And we don't like to think of that as deadly force. It's more of a force used to stop. And we'd only use that if in grave circumstances where maybe somebody else's life would be in danger if we didn't use that weapon. It's protection of the tax-paying citizens and fellow officers.
Sure.
Those are the reasons you draw your weapon.
You got to be protected. Would you like a donut, officer?
No.
Oh, okay. Just wondering. Anyway, let me ask you a few personal questions. How old are you?
38.
Oh, I see. That's a good age to be a policeman, I suppose. What kind of gun you carry?
38.
Oh, yeah. How many homicides have you solved in the past few years?
38.
Very interesting. Talk about probable cause. You know, let's say a guy's in his apartment. He's not doing anything, just like counting stacks of money or something, and you are sitting in your car and you look at him through binoculars, right? You're looking at him through binoculars, and actually you weren't looking at him, you were looking at this girl undressing in the apartment above, but your binoculars went down. Would you have probable cause, let's say, to arrest a guy? That was legitimate.
Mr. Pantucci, no one in New York City Police Department looks through binoculars at women undressing in apartments.
Oh, of course not.
And we wouldn't be looking at anybody in the apartment with binoculars unless we had a reason to believe there was some sort of crime. See, now, there's a difference between probable cause and reasonable suspicion, a hunch, and then nothing at all. Probable cause is when you have the facts and circumstances there seem to suggest a crime. You have to be able to articulate that and say what exactly it is. Do you understand that, Mr. Pantucci?
Sure, I understand. So what you're saying is, I or a friend of mine could be, let's say a friend of mine that I don't know, but like somebody fictitious, like, you know, in a magazine somewhere, could be sitting there, and would you have a right to go in his apartment and search and frisk?
Well, we wouldn't go into his apartment without having probable cause that some sort of crime has been or is going to be committed, and before entering his apartment, we'd have to have a warrant.
How do you get a warrant?
Well, like I said, you have to be able to articulate your probable cause to a judge or a magistrate, and then you get out the appropriate paperwork, and then you take that appropriate paperwork to either the person you wish to arrest, or you use it to the domicile that you wish to search.
Well, let's say, would the warrant have to be signed by any commissioner in particular?
I just told you, a judge or a magistrate.
Yeah, judge or a magistrate. You mean a judge is a magistrate, or is magistrate a judge? I don't understand this.
I didn't think you would, Mr. Pantucci.
Well, yeah, I mean, you know, the legal system really, I enjoy the legal system. Sometimes it's a little bit of a bad thing, you know, because I do own several businesses, and sometimes the police officers do ask questions, obviously, about other hooligans and hoodlums that are wandering around. Certainly not anybody that I know or could be associated with. But you know what I've been finding out lately is that a lot of informers have been helping the police department. What about informers? How do informers work?
Well, there's a couple different types of informers, Mr. Pantucci. You have what's called the good citizen type informer. An example of good citizen, for example, say I was to be eating at a diner, and a waitress comes over to me, and she gives me a tip that somebody at one of the other tables just dropped, like, say, a bag of illegal contraband on the chair or on the floor next to him, and then quickly picked it up and stuffed it back in the
Illegal
pocket.
contraband. Go on.
So that's one tip that I could have gotten from a good citizen.
So you get tips from waitresses? Isn't it supposed to be the other way around?
Anyway, Mr. Pantucci, the other type is the anonymous tip. That's where somebody drops a dime, say like your brother, or say a friend of yours, maybe got ticked off about something you did in one of your legitimate businesses. You decided to drop the dime in the phone and give the police department a call.
You know, I don't know what this world is coming to. Is that, can you use that in court? Not for me, but for, you know, what I read.
Don't believe everything you read, Mr. Pantucci. The other type of informer is the habitual informer. Say, for example, we collar some punk off the streets for some nickel-dime type crime. It's not worth the taxpayers' money to try to prosecute this kid. So instead, we make a deal with him. He doesn't have to do any time. He keeps on giving us some information. Every once in a while, we pay this kid a visit. You know, he kind of he consorts with the criminal element quite a bit more than, well, the average person, maybe, Mr. Pantucci. For a police officer, we lead the lifestyle of just about any other American. So we turn to these undesirables, and we use them for information.
I hate undesirables and hooligans of any kind.